Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Tuesday, March 23rd. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 163 days, the game against Michigan in 249 days. Spring football now in full swing as Ohio State held its second practice of the spring yesterday. We also got a chance to talk to Ryan Day and also one of the surest signs of spring, the release of the updated roster. It is like an unofficial holiday on Ohio State Twitter. And as soon as that posted, Buckeye Scoop's X's and O's guru Ross Fulton picked up on a very interesting trend there. He is my guest this morning, Ross, while the rest of us were all looking and going, oh, look, updated jersey numbers and, who's listed at a different position. You picked up on a really interesting trend with the linebackers. So what was that? And what do you think it means maybe for the defense this fall?
Yeah, well, so the thing that jumped out to me is the guys who would play Sam linebacker / bullet. It would somewhat be easier if we just, and Tony asked Ryan Day this, can we just call it one name and then you can, sub in different guys to the matchups, but the people at that spot, the Pete Werner position from 2019, if you will, we're all in the low 220 range in weight, like Craig Young and Kayvon Pope specifically. And that to me is you're now are more of a hybrid linebacker safety size, whereas even Werner probably in 2019 was probably more like 230. And then Barry Browning last year was what, like 240, 245. I mean, like a more true big Sam linebacker. And so to me, this kind of goes to the bigger point, which is what I've been focused on is, how are they going to change the defense either structurally or if not structurally, how are they going to get back to closer to what they were like running this style of defense in 2019 from what happened to the past defense last year?
Well, I mean, that's something we got to talk to Kerry Combs late last week. We talked to Day again on Monday. What is your read based on what they had to say? And, sort of, again, we're reading tea leaves. This is very early in spring, but, what is your read on what they're really going to try and do on that side of the ball schematically this year?
Yeah. I mean, as Dave doubled down on Monday morning, they want to run the same scheme. That said, I think they want to run it better than they did last year. And I do think there's something to it. So Combs on Friday called cover one their fastball pitch or, their base defense, which is a big thing. I do think they need to be able to successfully play man coverage to run this scheme. And that was probably the biggest problem in 2020. I think if you looked at Pro Football Focus's numbers for Ohio State that year, they ran of their single high coverages, they ran cover three 57% of the time and cover one only 22% of the time, which is just crazy to run any single coverage that much. Whereas in 2019, it was more split. They played cover one maybe 40% of the time, which is one of the highest in college football. So they basically went from being one of the highest man defenses to one of the lowest. And you just can't run when you're basing out of, single high air quote safety coverages where they're if your safety is in the middle of the field, you basically have two choices, and that's cover one man with a free safety or cover three. And so what makes the defense they want to run work well is to be able to mix and match those without the offense knowing pre-snap, just because the safety's in the middle of the field, this is what we're going to do. So they have to play cover one well. And so I think they are beyond the obvious, which is they need better cornerback play. They need more consistent play from the deep safety, but they also need guys at what they're now calling the cover safety position, which I frankly think is a better term than slot corner because it really is a safety. And at that Sam linebacker bullet spot, who can both also play man coverage on their counterparts. So the cover safety on the slot receiver and the Sam linebacker bullet, if what you will, on the tight end.
No, I mean, the bullet is really interesting. As you said, Tony Gerdeman asked Ryan Day about it on Monday. They said, the bullet is still a thing. That is still a thing they're going to have. Has not been combined in with the Sams again or anything like that. And, he didn't really specifically say that, but I mean, it does sound like someone like Craig Young might be in the mix there. How do you see them using the bullet this year? Or, maybe a better question, how would you use the bullet if it was up to you? Is that a situational thing based on down and distance? Is it opposing personnel? How would you maybe roll that out this year?
My personal belief is that if you want to call it the bullet, the type of person that should fill the bullet role should be their starting Sam linebacker or play the majority of snaps. Now, maybe against a Wisconsin, you change it up and bring in a more traditional linebacker, but your default, nearly every team they play on the schedule runs some type of spread offense. And to me, the defense again in 2019 worked far better when Pete Werner could, play cover one man on the tight end, but also could drop back in coverage. So like, if you have someone at that position like Craig Young who can drop to the deep safety or drop to be a split safety, it just gives you a lot more coverage versatility. You can rotate your cover three or your zone either direction. And so I just think they're good enough against the run. As I said before today, I assume Craig Young would probably be the starting Sam linebacker. He seemed to come in after Baron Browning last year. So I don't see any reason he can't hold up and run defense and set the edge. And so I just think everything that they do, especially if they're going to stick with this scheme and emphasize playing cover one, I think everything they need to do is to get a little lighter so that they can play coverage better.
Now, on the other side of the ball, I mean, this is, I guess, true on both sides of the ball, where this is maybe one of the most interesting springs of a number of years at Ohio State, where the talent level is arguably higher than it's ever been in school history. And there's also a ton of spots open on both sides of the ball with a lot of very, very hyped players competing for those positions. I mean, you can kind of take your pick of spots on the offense. Like, what is there one position group where you are most interested in seeing this spring on the offensive side of the ball, where it's just like so much talent? Who's gonna take that next step and get themselves into the rotation or win the starting job?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I probably would say the wide receiver room. I mean, I'm intrigued as to what they do with the third wide receiver position, as well as how deep they go in the rotation. I mean, I've been skeptical this offseason that they would really go back to anything resembling like a true 6-man rotation, just because Olave and Wilson are so good. Why would you want to take them off the field? But I do think that with as many players as they have, they need more production than they got out of the, Jamison Williams position last year. And so whether that's, Jackson Smith-Njigba starting and maybe you bump Wilson outside, or whether that's Fleming flipping to the other side. I mean, there's lots of potential combinations there. I think they'll play more 3 wide receiver sets, as Kevin Wilson alluded to, with the lack of like a second tight end like they had last year. And so I think you'll see more 11 personnel in general, which gives more opportunity as a wide receiver. But I would still expect Wilson and Olave and then Ruckert probably to be maybe have the third most catches. So, I don't know if you're necessarily looking for you don't need a breakout superstar, but you do want like another reliable option so that teams can't do what Alabama did, which is roll coverage to Olave.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think there's just, that is such a talented room, and there is going to be a third guy who steps up, whether it's Jamison Williams or one of the freshmen from last year, or maybe one of the freshmen from this year steps up in the middle of the year. But I'm sure there are a bunch of people. Everyone loves quarterbacks, so I'm going to make you talk about quarterbacks now. They are all 3 guys, very different kind of players: C.J. Stroud, Jack Miller, and Kyle McCord. And every time we talk to someone about the quarterbacks, they always say, "Well, they're just they're very different players. They have very different elements to their games, very different skill sets." So, I mean, how much will that impact what they do this fall with the offense, depending on which one of those 3 guys with their different unique skill sets actually wins the job? And if it is potentially a big difference, how soon do they have to have a pretty good idea who's actually going to be the starter to be able to tailor the offense to that player?
Yeah, until I see Kyle McCord, run, it's a little hard for me. I mean, because I know I will fully admit I'm not a recruiting guy, so I've not watched him play, but I have seen enough of CJ Stroud and Jack Miller run that I know that they can proficiently handle, zone read type plays. And my kind of baseline assumption somewhat is paradoxically, even though none of them are probably as good at runners as Justin Fields, that may be more a part of the offense this year than it was last year. Because I think last year, they just didn't want to expose Fields to injury. They were obviously very young behind him. And Fields was obviously very experienced. So some of the things we saw in 2019, for instance, Bash, which is, the running back runs a sweep away and the quarterback is the one running the zone action behind the offensive line. They just weren't part of the game plan last year. And, it was very effective and very helpful to the run game in 2019 to have that. And so I would expect some of those things to come back with younger quarterbacks. So you're probably not going to feel quite as willing to rely on, throwing the football in similar situations all the time next year.
Yeah, a little more interchangeability and a closer skill level between those three guys makes them a little more interchangeable, which will make for a very interesting spring and summer, and possibly a little bit of different play calling this fall. I'm going to let you go with this one. What is one thing you could see or hear this spring that would make you feel either very good or very bad about Ohio State's chances this fall?
To me, I mean, I know everyone's interested in the quarterbacks. I perhaps naively am just assuming whoever is going to start is going to be good. And so for me, it's all about the pass defense. Like just both scheme and personnel is what to me is going to decide whether Ohio State, can win a national championship next year. So, they say they want cover one to be their fastball. So I guess I want to hear them say that they're doing great playing cover one in practice. I would like personally to know that there's people like, it sounds to me like there's an ongoing competition between Latham Ranson and Marcus Williamson as to who's going to be starting as the cover safety and who's going to be the nickel. I mean, I think Ramson is better able to play man coverage. So I think that would be a good sign if he's starting. Similarly, like if Craig Young's starting and they seem to be able to do this hybrid stuff, I think that's key. And obviously corner play. So anything that suggests that they can play better pass defense, whether it's scheme or personnel next year would I think what I would like to hear.
I think that's probably right close to the top of the list for a lot of Ohio State fans right now. I'm like, hey, what if it didn't look like last year? That would probably be good. Yeah. And there's a bunch of stuff obviously that may not shake out this spring, in terms of Cam Brown being back in 100% and stuff like that. So yeah, this is going to be something that's going to be fascinating to watch all spring and all summer into the fall. So Ross, thank you for joining me. Appreciate it. And we will have much more. We had Ryan Day yesterday on BuckeyeScoop.com, had an interview with him. And then today we're talking to the running backs. We'll be talking to Tony Alford, and then the plan is to talk to all 6 of the scholarship running backs, including the 2 true freshmen. So that should be a lot of fun this morning, a little later on this morning. So that will be coming up at BuckeyeScoop.com. And then Thursday, I believe we're talking to linebackers. I believe that's the working plan right now. So should be a fun week of football at BuckeyeScoop.com. So make sure you check out all our website with all of that great stuff. There's lots of free content, and of course, tons of great insider content on our Ask the Insiders board as well. And check out all of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker, you name it, we're there. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. And also check out youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. We put all those press conferences up there on that channel. You can subscribe right there and get notified every time we post a new video, plus all of our podcasts. Mick Walker's had a tour of recruiting camps. He'll have a bunch of new videos up there from that. So there will be a lot of great content all there at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. So subscribe there as well. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.